Mommy Track Daddy Whispers podcast is now called Birth Agni Podcast.
Welcome to Mommy Track Daddy Whispers podcast, Season 3.
I think that's where the activism is missing the point, which is one, it's incredibly important in involvement for a lot of issues that the activism is trying to solve. It's extremely challenging because every 15 days the dynamic can be different, you know.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So it's worth checking in, but at the same time, it's extremely confusing to us as humans because
Hi, I'm Divya, a certified lactation counselor, your host, and here on the podcast, you get stories of birth workers, birth and its emotional impact, pregnancy education info, and the yearly segment where we bring fatherhood stories from fathers, unadulterated and fresh. Today we are sitting with Rajat Mittal, who is an engineer turned publisher and founder of Boyish, a monthly newsletter questioning gender stereotypes impacting manhood, really speaking about individualism over gender. Today, we wish to hear from him, his parenthood journey, and what led to a more self reflective approach in life. He's also the former co founder of Menstrupedia. Let's welcome him. So, hi Rajat, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being with us today.
thank you, Divya. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and how was your travel? You were traveling and right back, you are here with us having this conversation, this really heavy conversation that I suppose is going to be.
Yeah, travel was good. It was part relaxing, part stressful because traveling with a toddler and whatnot. But
Yeah.
I'm glad we are here. You know, I'm glad to be back and looking forward to this conversation as well as to get back to my schedule, I would say.
Yeah. It feels, even when you are like as an entrepreneur, if you are taking a holiday, at the back of your mind, you have all those meetings that are to come in and all of the things that you need to do. You kind of had that list on at the back of your mind. So I understand. And Rajat, would you take us back to the time that you were expecting? You guys were planning to be parents, learning about pregnancy, being overwhelmed with the nature's beautiful transformation and all of the creative powers that are within you. How did you feel as a partner, as a father to be back then?
Mhm. It's an interesting question. Slightly challenging one because, you know, with parenthood, everything gets washed away. Everything in the past gets washed away very easily because the present moment in parenthood is so all consuming that you
Yeah.
often, forget what has happened in the past. Um, for us, uh, some of the unique things that happened that I recollect now were, we had this idea of planning a parenthood. Like we wanted to plan it, and we had heard about that it takes time to actually conceive,
Yeah.
right? In our case, it actually ended up being the opposite, which is we conceived far sooner than we ever imagined.
Yeah.
So it started from that. Oh, wait a second. Everything that we had learned, like we have already gone sideways from that in some sense.
Yeah.
Beyond that, I think as a partner for me, a few things were uncomfortable, specifically that I think parenthood is often, pregnancies specifically, by default, like you go on the sort of passenger seat, and which is fine, and in some sense makes a ton of sense to me. The mother is obviously, or the expecting mother is obviously undergoing far more changes than a father does or expecting father does. But I think I would have appreciated what I used to joke about was that my part is not that tiny. Like this is an event for me as well,
Yeah.
So I sort of try to coach people around me that, hey, listen, including family, like that. This is an event for me as well.
I hear you totally. So I was having this conversation with Joshua. Joshua is a postpartum coordinator, the postpartum anxiety coordinator for dads for Postpartum Support International. And Joshua said the same thing, and he had his own episodes of stress in parenthood. And one of the things that he spoke about was the fact that I felt less included and I felt more detached, despite being wanting to be there for my partner and being more involved in the role. So there were conversations with doctors and all the healthcare professionals that were just with, the mother, and nobody asked me how I was feeling and what I could do as a parent, So we often talk about, this brings me to equal parenting. As soon as, we become parents and, the father should be involved, like he should be involved. And then as a society, we kind of sideline the father. We don't want to, involve the father intentionally, and rather blame it on patriarchy and gender and blah, blah, blah. And then what are we doing, outside this activism that is there? So, that kind of inclusion, that brings me to the conversation that I had with Joshua. What are your thoughts in that, inclusion and trying to rather have, fathers, because a new father is not that they have learned it all from their fathers, and today's generation wants to learn hands-on. They want to be hands-on partners. So what is your take on equal parenting, as they call it, and then not including the partners in birth, in parenthood, and probably just by answering their questions and asking them, how are you feeling? Is that, what do you think?
So, first of all, I concur on this, or the getting sidelined. For instance, I actually went to a expecting fathers class, which is like an exclusive session for fathers to be, right? And which was seen as something funny by a lot of people, because they were like, they just couldn't wrap their head around, someone doing that. It was almost as if I had something to hide, which I wanted to share, rather than seeing it as just pure curiosity and maybe even pure vulnerability that I want to learn. So it was rather seen as why do you want to go to a space where there are only men talking about, on this whole equal parenthood thing. I don't know. I especially the activism that's happening around it. I actually feel even the activism is quite exclusionary of men. It is, by framing it as a lot of times it is framed as something that women undergo or women bear the load of, and hence why are you not participating? Like it's it's sort of, it feels like blaming.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whereas, and I think we're most mature people will understand the moment you blame someone, you've already put them on the defensive to
Yes.
participate, willingly, at
Yeah.
least. So I think that's where the activism is missing the point, which is one, it's incredibly important to involvement for a lot of issues that the activism is trying to solve. It is paramount to involvement.
Yeah.
But I do believe it has started off on it's a misstep, it seems. Intentionally, it seems good, but it sounds like a wrong fault, or like stumble,
Yeah, I do see where you're going, and in one of these forums that I follow, which is which has this activism of bringing feminism to the front. And when we say feminism, we kind of think women, this is happening to them because of patriarchy because of men are doing this. Just hammer them. And some of these things, some of these stereotypes feel, that those brackets to me feel equal to both men and women. So if we say women are conditioned to be home, to not go to work, to not have a life, as they say, men are conditioned to just go out of the house and not cater to their children and earn, make sure they have a good degree and just play basketball and not play with the doll probably. And what if my husband wants to play with the doll with my daughter, and he feels more inclined there, and he doesn't want to really play basketball with her, or force her into something that she doesn't want to. So I kind of totally agree to where you're going in terms of when we're trying to bring in equality. Where does equality lie? So I often talk about, for me and my husband, how I see it, it's more of a balanced balance that we're trying to find. So where in nature is anything equal? So when we talk about balance, we talk about me finding my own space, me doing what I like. He is able to find his own space, he's able to do what he likes, and then both of us involve as parents. And probably not equal, probably he's not there home all the time, I'm there. I kind of I pitched in and I said, I'm gonna be home, but I'm gonna be working. I want to work from home, and I can kind of manage it, kinds of and then there are days that I'm like, I can manage at home, I want to go out, you come in and pitch in and be home. So if that kind of a balance works and both the partners are happy, why are we trying to hammer that equation with saying equality? And what has been your experience? And I wanted to ask you, when you took those classes, were you in India, or were you in the US like you are right now?
I was in the US. So I think, thankfully for me, I'm not sure if it's the same in India at the moment, but there was a structure in which I can, opt in to if I wanted to. So there were classes happening. I won't be surprised if there are cities where nobody is even doing such events or such sessions. It's tricky, right? At some point, I do feel that this whole equality bit is a bit enforced, and we are naturally inclined, and outside of gender, let's just keep gender aside.
Yeah.
Just as individuals, we are naturally inclined to do certain things and not do certain things. That's just what makes us individual human beings.
Exactly.
So it's fine if you decide to spend your time in a certain way and the other partner decides to spend their. We don't have to force equality for the sake of equality. I would say, also for me and my partner, what has well, what has worked and sometimes not worked as well, funnily, is we would at least try our best to probe each other, if what's happening is working for the other person or not, because
That's
parenthood
wonderful.
is such a dynamic, ever evolving, ever changing relationship and event, it's I think it's extremely challenging because every 15 days the dynamic can be different,
Absolutely. Yeah.
so it's worth checking in, but at the same time it's extremely confusing to us as humans, because we were like, well, you just said 15 days back that you were fine with this, and now all of a sudden you're not,
Yeah.
So yeah, I think like just for us, like the event truly is a life event, and we have to respect it for that.
Yeah, I really like the fact that you said, probe into each other and keep asking, keep checking in. And that happens. And then holding space for that change. Because, we talk about teamwork in the office, in the corporates. Oh my God, teamwork is so important. You got to be that person. Sometimes we need to lead each other as partners. And I think the teamwork that we talk about with two people is really excruciating when you become parents. It kind of involves all aspects of the life skills that they say, to be parents, and and then your stakes are hugely involved in that baby. I look at certain things in that baby, and you look at certain things in the baby, and as partners we're kind of sometimes holding space again, like you said, for how someone else sees it, and then trying to just be okay with it. So going to the parenting ways, my husband and I have our own different ways, and sometimes I do kind of come back to him, look, I think this can be a little different, and then just by him trying to understand and being around as partners and without really bringing any kind of gender in it, this is also important. This is also extremely, and if you're not looking at those conversations and just trying to physically see where the parents are in terms of the gender norms, it might not work for everybody. It hasn't for me, and I'm quite vocal about it. And I have seen, and interestingly, people around me, especially women around me, this entire notion of comparing feminism with women going out to work. I think financial independence is extremely important, but then there are people as individuals who probably are not very comfortable with it, but then they find this constant bandwagon of feminism pushing them to go out of the work and feeling bad about themselves just because they're not going out of the house and working. And what about the work that we're doing at home? And unorganized labor is not recognized, not appreciated, and we are just adding to that patriarchy. Patriarchy never recognized it, and then you're not recognizing it as well, because you want women to go out and work, and all those pictures, those subtle images of women in corporate suits and laptops, and we can't look, just not look at it and say it's not there. So when was it, Rajat, that in your parenting journey, and I have, like you said, I have thought about it only when I became a parent. All these things started becoming clearer to me when I became a parent. I wasn't that. Probably I would have been the one saying feminism is you going out. Why are you sitting at home? Probably I would have been that person before I became a parent. Now I see the difference. Now I am able to probably just to clear out the mud of the waters for me. So when was it that you started studying the patriarchy pot for yourself? Was it really into parenting, or were you intuitive, and were you kind of, did have that kind of thoughts on it before you became a parent? What was it?
I think personally for me, well, at least the whole stirring the pot thing happened a little earlier than parenthood happened. That's simply because I got involved in some of this work around gender, even when I was single, for that matter, right? Like working on, for instance, a book project that talks about puberty for girls is extremely untraditional, I guess, for boys. Um, what parenting or like parenthood as a life event did for me in this was, I think it became evident to me that, uh, especially the unrecognized labor that happens at home became very evident because unless you have family support, like in most modern nuclear families today, if a life event like parenthood happens, the amount of work that's required to bring this human being, to keep this human being alive and feed him and nourish him, or is so high. I think like most couples will recognize at some point that oh my god, this is a full-time job. Like this is the joke about parenting, which is like you suddenly signed up for a full-time job.
And you can't take breaks because there is a human being who doesn't realize that you can take breaks.
You have no idea. Like you have a boss who is extremely militant.
True that.
Far more than anybody else. So I think like I think like parenthood made it very evident in my case. I will say though that for me, like some of this started happening earlier because of the work that I got associated with.
So you were I'll go to that project. So you were the co-founder of Menstrupedia. And that is where the entire work on talking about puberty for both boys and girls and menstrual cycles and all of that work started. What was it that in that work kind of because you are an engineer, you worked in a corporate setup, and now you are full-time into there's this writing space. So did that journey of starting Menstrupedia and then kind of starting Boyish as a as a venture to break gender stereotypes and really include the way we are saying, the way we are talking, so we've been talking so far about gender roles and patriarchy, and bringing that to surface and bringing holding more space for those conversations and really bringing those conversations into the mainstream talk. So did your experience with Menstrupedia kind of fueled you wanting to be in this space full time, and was it also parenting that got involved in this, because it kind of makes you more intuitive and makes you want to look within yourself every now and then?
I definitely think Menstrupedia fueled some of my passion and my work in that sense. Menstrupedia for me was basically signing up for an education that I never had and I never knew I wanted. Quite honestly, it just came to my desk as a project, which from two very close friends. So it was extremely hard to say no. It was evident. What was not clear to me was how I would help, because my skills on paper were not directly applicable to the project as well. But I think what happened for me over the 6 years of participating in that project is like I realized it provided me, as I said, the education that I never had and I never knew I wanted. I think that was certainly a driving force for it. It changed my perception about how to view certain problems, especially around I would say gender, or especially around working with young children, because there's activism and then there's how do you bring things from your activism to like on the ground change, right? Like, so,
Yes,
and when
that's
Superior
huge.
traveled that whole journey,
Wow.
so seeing that sort of up and close was a blessing, I would say.
Wow. And then when you started Boyish, you were already a parent, right?
Boyish and Parenthood sort of coincided, I would say. I was certainly a parent. I was basically my son was maybe 4 to 6 months old when I decided so the funny thing is, like, when I became a father, I decided to take a break from work, which
Lovely.
is unconventional because it's typically the mom who, at least in the circle of humans that I live and interact with, it's typically has been the mom. It was slightly unconventional in that sense that I decided to take a break instead of the mom. And I think, like, because I got the break and I had enough sort of, I had some time to step away and think through. And as you said, reflect, which Parenthood, by the way, is like such a huge forcing function. Like, it just stops you in your heels and, like, makes you reevaluate everything. Boyish became it became very evident that Boyish needs to happen. Because up until then, I had done some work for girls. All of a sudden, I'm a father of a boy. And, it became like a natural next step for me.
Yeah. I read somewhere that you wanted to write something for your son, Ehan. And that is when you kind of realized that, what do I bring into that writing that I want to tell him? Did that, really was the seed for Boyish?
Yeah. So I write these letters to him. Every few months I try to write a letter. My intention is to give him these letters when he grows up. It's sort of a borrowed idea. It's not like it's a romantic idea of fatherhood, I would say.
But that's special,
to give all your wisdom in letters in written form. And I secretly wish he finds them in a closet somewhere when he grows up.
Like it so much.
It's completely stolen from a movie that I don't reflect. But anyways, because when fatherhood happened and I started penning these down, a lot of these letters were extremely sort of, first of all, they were private in a sense, right? Because I was writing it very much from my own point of view. But as I started writing them, I could see some aspects of that writing that could potentially be public as well. Without, like I was okay with that level of vulnerability, I would say, in sharing those some of that writing. So that really laid the roots for Boyish season 1 at least.
Yeah. And do you think that Narjit, I think when you said that, I felt that those things, although they were vulnerable, those concepts that I had on my mind that could go public, did you at that time also feel that it is needed to bring this to public platforms? Because probably a lot of men, as we want to say, may relate to this, and it may help them probably frame their life changes after becoming a parent, or in general.
Yeah, absolutely. Because so as I said, because I had stepped away from my corporate job at that point, and I had more time to really think about, and an event like fatherhood happened. So it led me to think about how I grew up and what are the life choices I could have made that I would like my son to make if he wants to. For instance, dancing is something that I recollected a lot because as he was growing up, I was like, when I grew up, I used to love dancing, and then it literally got hammered out of me. Up until 10, I used to dance even in like public events. I was comfortable with it, and then it's almost as if it got dropped from a cliff, from a personal cliff, where I was suddenly
conscious.
Very conscious of dancing as a boy in a public space, and so I think like that's why a lot of work that happened was probing myself through sort of my son Ihan's help in some sense. Like, what are the things that I probably would have enjoyed doing, looking at him, and that he enjoys doing maybe. And as sort of that collection of things grew, it became like that sort of laid the groundwork for the season 1 of Boyish.
And now, through Boyish, you have these really interesting conversations with different people who have like made choices probably outside of the gender stereotype. And how does that kind of add to you as a father? Has that really helped you in probably writing more letters like those and really add to your relationship also as a parent,
Certainly. I would say, once again, like these things get interesting for me because you walk into these conversations, into these spaces, assuming that you have a liberal, open, you're largely liberal and you're open to any sort of ideas. But the more time you spend in these spaces, you realize where your boundaries are, and I think what's been most fun for me is sitting on those boundaries and negotiating with myself that can I move them now for myself, for my family, and what does moving them mean, and as I talk to people and talk to men who have sort of challenged or gone into roles which are traditionally non-masculine, I would say. I do think it has, if nothing else, it has made me more relaxed of how to view myself. I don't have to feel ashamed of expressing joy when I have to express joy, because I think like one of the fascinating things for me has been a lot of men have this like do this role play of like extreme stoicism, when and they just subscribe to this idea where I don't think they actually enjoy it, but because they think like that's the masculine thing to do. Any form of frivolous play or fun is feminine by definition, which I think is an extremely toxic idea to subscribe to.
Absolutely love the fact that you said it's toxic, because I have seen that around me. I have seen my husband, for one, has been somebody who's a little inexpressive. When it comes to expressing his deepest feelings, he stops after some time, or probably he doesn't start. And, all through our relationship, I've seen that when he's holding his feelings, it is affecting him, even on a physical level, not feeling good, and as you become more aware of people around you, and as he is also learned to be more open to me, and without being judged in the way it is, it shows in parenting also. And it can be seen how relaxing it can be. But then again, everybody has its own individual nature, and it cannot be changed, for one. But we can see that to be allowed to be vulnerable and to hold that space for people around you in general is so liberating for yourself as well. It's like you said, it's liberating to be on those boundaries and think for yourself, do I really want to jump in, or do you want to stay here, or go back to my own boundaries? So it's lovely that you said yes, it is toxic and does become toxic to you yourself and to relationships around you. So there has to be an outlet, probably if not verbal, some way or the other you need to express what's burdening you. And if not to your partner, probably you can express to your friends. And it's important, where you find that outlet. And I really like this, and I'm going filmy here. I really like this line from that the movie Dil Zindagi Zindagi, the Alia Bhatt and Shah Rukh Khan movie, where the Shah Rukh Khan and Alia Bhatt are having this conversation. Can you love one person who has everything in him or her, and the perfect definition of love? And he goes on to say, no, if you want to have fun, you might have your bunch of friends that you want to have fun with. Or probably there's that angle of you want to be very that fits in well, that puzzle fits in well, so with your partner, and you only like to do it with your partner. And that makes so much sense. That kind of makes so much sense, in all relationships. So I really like the fact that you said it plain and simple, that yes, it becomes toxic unless you have that outlet. And just to say that I find parenting very spiritual, and you've been hinting on it for throughout this conversation, that it has made you think deeper. It has made you more intuitive, if I can use that word. And for me, it helped me realize my triggers as a parent. So as a father, did it help you realize probably these are my triggers? And, that kind of a transformation.
I think what it made me realize, triggers, I'm less able to think about that at the moment. But what's the thought that's coming in my mind right now, it at least made me realize that I need to set boundaries. It's
Wonderful.
far more clear with a toddler than with a partner, that you need boundaries if you need to survive. And I also understood, this idea of me time was more in the air for me, and I couldn't really, I could like sense it, but I couldn't really place my finger on it. And I think like Parenthood did that for me, which is like, okay, no, this is what it means, and I need to really grab it to say, like, how important and essential me time becomes for your individual as well as for your whole family's sake.
Yes.
So triggers, I think like, I think that this is what it's coming to my mind, which is, like boundaries is how I think of it.
It's lovely. It's wonderful. And it kind of also, goes into the same line. When I say triggers, it's also, for example, this is something that I don't like, and I'm letting that happen to me. And then I realize it's making me angry. It's making me anxious. I'm not able to kind of, and as a parent, you have to always have some space for receiving. Sometimes you kind of close it. And then you realize, okay, what is triggering me to close it? And like you said, probably I need those boundaries in place. I want some me time. I want to do this and, make sure that my son or daughter knows that this is the time that I work and I like it. It's not that, I have I'm giving them those inputs time and again, even though it feels difficult. Because the little human being you can feel guilty to give in and not give in rather, and show that love, but then you have to do it because they have to be in that environment and give you your own space, and then they learn to like a family unit, like you said. It's so wonderful. And I cannot kind of think of anything else as a question right now. And I think we have pretty much covered in our own light way the gender stereotypes. One of the things that I personally wanted to ask you, Rajat, is I have felt this through this podcast, and now that I'm a birth worker. Patriarchy is something that also, as a process, as like we've already discussed, not really in the gender roles, patriarchy as a societal phenomena. But sometimes when I'm talking about patriarchy, I personally also kind of sometimes feel that I have to create stereotypes sometimes to be able to find meaning into certain concepts. Has this ever happened to you? Just probably on the personal note that I wanted to ask you, because
can you elaborate that?
Sometimes, it's like you said, it's so confusing that things seem stereotyped, but at the same time, they don't seem stereotyped. And probably to find meaning, I have to, first of all, put things into bracket. And what I'm really trying to come to is take everything out of the bracket. But just to be able to see where the brackets lie, sometimes I have to put things into bracket that may be so subtle, and I feel sometimes guilty of doing that. So does that happen to you? I think it's a part of, yeah.
It does. I think I know where you're getting to, and it's funny because I agree. Like, you have to sometimes put things in the box to understand how to unbox those things, like for me, like this whole like patriarchal, again, like I think that this is such a constant negotiation of, because by definition, and especially by if I were to sort of subscribe to at least the very woke part of this activism, then by definition, everything is thrown out of the window, and we start from scratch as very equal. But I feel that's like moral absolutism here, like that doesn't really happen. That doesn't really exist. So I am always negotiating with, okay, what aspect of this is sure, I mean, maybe this is patriarchal, but is this working for my unit, for myself as an individual and for my family? And if it is, then I'm fine, but what I'm sort of trying to do is understand where some of these boundaries can be stretched for myself as well as for my family, Maybe a better or a concrete example of this would be, or rather a simple example of this would be, which is, for instance, boys putting nail polish, like for instance, like my son loves it, and as again, like someone, not just someone who is involved in such work or thinks actively about such things, I think anyone on social media or who spends time on social media would be like, yes, let him do that. A lot of people would subscribe to that. And the reality is, I don't think me and my partner are comfortable with it. And that felt really odd for some time. And then I think like I figured that it's okay. It's okay if we don't want him to we want to set that boundary, that this is the boundary of this family, we can negotiate it and we can sit here and understand it, but at some point boundaries will be, we will draw a boundary because that's what keeps us sane.
Yeah,
as
absolutely.
human beings.
Yeah.
I'm not saying this is your boundary or this should be everyone else's boundary, but and I'm not even saying this is my boundary, but it is my boundary today.
Yeah.
I'm happy to negotiate it when a certain event happens or a certain other on a different timeline. But for today, this is my boundary, and I'm going to sit with it here.
Yeah, and lovely that you spoke about it, because what you are trying to bring out through Boyish, and what the entire probably the system, the community that is talking about feminism, or trying to denounce or bring down patriarchy, is trying to somewhere down the line let individualism be alive. Like you said in the very start, we want to talk about each other as individuals and hold space for everyone's choices. What needs to go out of the window is judgment. The day we hold more space to each other's choices, it's gonna be a lot more simple.
Yeah.
I think I would say thank you for doing this conversation. We have been able to, talk about fatherhood, talk about patriarchy and gender stereotypes in a more personal way. And I like that, from one parent to another. Thank you so much for doing it. And thank you so much for doing what you're doing with Boyish. And I really hope that, the parents that are listening, go and check that out and just see for themselves that what we're talking about, really, what individualism is, and what patriarchy is outside the gender roles. Thank you so much, Rajat. Thank you so much for taking out the time.
Thank you so much for having me. I will say that I loved the conversation. I enjoyed chatting, and most interestingly, I think I've taken some notes. This is probably gonna prompt me to do some more writing work.
Love it.
So I love conversations where I get to go back and use them as more writing prompts. So thank you for giving those to me.
Thank you for this amazing conversation. I really loved it too. Thank you.
Yeah.
Probably we can collaborate sometime later.
We should figure this out. Yes.
Thank you so much, Rajat. Thank you.
Wonderful. Please take care, Divya.
Thank you. Thank you for listening. I hope you heard beyond the words here. Hope it resonated with you or just made an impact. Next up is the story of Paternal Postpartum Anxiety, shared by a father who realized through his journey how important paternal support is for parenthood as a family affair. Joshua is our next guest, and he is the dad coordinator for Postpartum Support International. Wait for him to be with us on the next episode. Thank you for tuning in. You can just scroll around on this application and see, maybe you can like this episode or subscribe or comment your words of wisdom for this episode or the segments or the entire podcast. Thank you so much for listening in. See you next.